The date is March 31st, 1985. Madison Square Garden pulses with an electric anticipation that transcends ordinary sporting spectacle. The air is thick with testosterone, sweat, and raw human drama. At the center of this maelstrom stands Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, a physical specimen so meticulously sculpted he seems chiseled from marble by the most exacting of Renaissance artists. Wrestlemania 1 is more than a wrestling event. It's a cultural phenomenon that will reshape entertainment, athletics, and the very concept of staged combat. And Paul Orndorff is not just a participant, he is a pivotal character in this unfolding narrative of larger-than-life masculinity and performative aggression. Here he stands, shoulder to shoulder with Roddy Piper, facing off against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T in a collision of charisma and spectacle. This isn't just the main event, it's the blueprint for every Wrestlemania that follows, an audacious gamble that redefines wrestling forever. Mr. Wonderful's physique is a weapon. Each muscle group is defined with surgical precision, a testament to countless hours of relentless training and iron discipline. His heel persona, the arrogant, beautifully conditioned antagonist, represents something more than mere character. He embodies a transformation occurring in professional wrestling, where athletes are becoming less about brute strength and more about aesthetic perfection and calculated performance. To truly understand Paul Orndorff, we must journey back to his origins, to the crucible that would forge one of professional wrestling's most compelling figures. Born on October the 29th, 1949 in Brandon, Florida, Paul Parlett Orndorff Jr. emerged into a world that would not come easily to him. His childhood in a working-class family was marked by struggle and an intrinsic drive that would become his most defining characteristic. Growing up in Tampa during the 1950s and 60s, young Paul was not immediately destined for athletic greatness. He was smaller than many of his peers, which might have deterred a less determined individual. But determination was Paul Orndorff's first language. Football became his initial arena of ambition. He discovered not just an athletic outlet, but a pathway to self-transformation. Despite his relatively modest size, Orndorff's work ethic was extraordinary. He wasn't just playing football, he was reimagining himself through physical discipline. His collegiate football career at the University of Tampa continued this trajectory. Here he began to understand that physical excellence was not just about natural talent, but about relentless, almost obsessive commitment. Football was teaching him something profound about human potential, that limitations are often more mental than physical. He eventually transitioned from fullback to tight end during his senior year, amassing over 2,000 all-purpose yards and 21 touchdowns in a standout college career. Drafted by the New Orleans Saints in 1973 as a potential dual-role player, Orndorff walked away from the NFL during training camp, citing personal issues and a growing interest in professional wrestling. A brief stint with the Chicago Bears and an injury-plagued tenure in the World Football League further nudged him toward wrestling, a path that would ultimately transform him into an iconic figure in sports entertainment. After stepping away from football, Orndorff's entry into professional wrestling was sparked by a connection through his father-in-law, leading to a debut in 1976 with Mid-Southern Wrestling, where he immediately clashed with rising star Jerry Lawler. By 1977, he had captured the NWA Southern Heavyweight Championship and later made his mark in the tri-state promotion, engaging in a fierce rivalry with Ernie Ladd that saw him claim and briefly hold the North American heavyweight title twice. Riding high on his success, Orndorff cemented his reputation in the National Wrestling Alliance, battling the Masked Superstar and earning the moniker the Brandon Bull, a nod to his football roots. By 1979, he had claimed gold alongside Jimmy Snuka as World Tag Team Champions and later dominated the Southeast Championship wrestling scene, capturing tag team titles with partners like Dick Slater and Norvell Austin, each reign punctuating his rise through the ranks of wrestling greatness. In 1980, Orndorff transitioned fully to the Mid-South territory, where his fiery feuds and dramatic storylines solidified his reputation. From defeating Ken Mantell in a hair-raising rivalry to turning heel after Jake the Snake Roberts claimed the North American title he coveted, Orndorff's complex persona captivated fans. Winning the title himself on July 4, 1981, he battled icons like Ted DiBiase and Dusty Rhodes before betrayal by Bob Roop ignited a bitter feud that ultimately pushed Orndorff to exit the Mid-South scene. In early 1982, Orndorff returned to Georgia Championship Wrestling, igniting a fierce rivalry with Buzz Sawyer that culminated in him capturing the National Heavyweight Championship. While briefly vacating the title to chase Ric Flair's World Championship, Orndorff refocused on reclaiming his vacated gold, battling the Super Destroyer and the Masked Superstar in a whirlwind of title exchanges throughout the year. His reign came to an end after Larry Zbyszko orchestrated a controversial plot involving killer Tim Brooks, leading to the title's vacancy. Seeking fresh challenges, Orndorff ventured to New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1983, competing against top talents like Riki Choshu and Antonio Inoki, and forging an unforgettable partnership with Big John Studd. By the time Orndorff arrived in the World Wrestling Federation, he was not just another wrestler. He was a carefully constructed archetype of masculine bravado. He made an unforgettable debut on January 23, 1984, defeating Salvatore Bellomo at Madison Square Garden, immediately catapulting himself into the main event spotlight. His matches were performances, his promos theatrical monologues. He didn't just wrestle, he told stories with his body, his expressions, his carefully cultivated arrogance. His most significant early Federation storyline involved Roddy Piper, a partnership that would define the emerging era of wrestling as dramatic narrative. Piper was in fact the one who gave Orndorff the Mr. Wonderful moniker. Together, they represented a new breed of heel, not just villains, but complex, charismatic antagonists that audiences loved to hate. As referenced in the introduction, their most famous collaboration was a tag team that challenged the immensely popular Mr. T and Hulk Hogan, leading into Wrestlemania 1. This wasn't just a wrestling match, it was a cultural moment that would help transform professional wrestling from a niche entertainment into a global phenomenon. It was theater, it was spectacle, it was a referendum on emerging media narratives about masculinity, celebrity, and performance. Orndorff, paired with Piper, represented a kind of calculated villainy that was becoming wrestling's most compelling storytelling mechanism. During the match, Orndorff's manager Bob Orton's interference backfired disastrously when his cast accidentally struck Orndorff, allowing Hogan to secure the win. Furious over the loss, Piper and Orton attacked Orndorff on Saturday night's main event, but later that night, Orndorff stormed back to the ring to save Hogan from a 2-on-1 assault, marking a dramatic shift in alliances. Cementing his babyface turn, Orndorff publicly severed ties with manager Bobby Heenan, signaling a new chapter in his career. Orndorff and Hogan joined forces to wage war against Piper and Orton, battling them in high-stakes tag team matches across the country. While Hogan focused on defending his title, Orndorff took on both Piper and Orton in fierce singles competition, with their clashes often ending inconclusively. After firing Heenan, Orndorff became a marked man as Heenan placed a $25,000 bounty on him, later raising it to $50,000 when no one succeeded. The escalating chaos drew Bruno Sammartino into the fray as a special referee, but when Piper and Orton turned their aggression towards Sammartino, he teamed up with Orndorff, intensifying the feud. Meanwhile, Orndorff also allied with Andre the Giant and faced new threats, including a double countout showdown with Don Muraco as Hogan prepared for his WrestleMania 2 clash with King Kong Bundy. Soon, Adrian Adonis began relentlessly mocking Orndorff, calling him Hulk Jr., and taunting him for allegedly softening from his association with Hogan. The tension escalated when a televised phone call from Hogan, where Orndorff was told Hogan was too busy training to speak, pushed Orndorff to prove his independence. During their next match against the Moondogs, Orndorff wrestled solo to outshine Hogan, and in a later bout against Big John Studd and Bundy, a collision with Hogan appeared to injure Orndorff, leading to his delayed return to the ring, only for him to shockingly turn on Hogan with a devastating clothesline along with his trademark piledriver. His feud with Hulk Hogan became particularly noteworthy. What made this rivalry compelling was not just athletic competition, but a nuanced psychological drama played out in and around the wrestling ring. Their matches were rarely just about winning or losing. They were elaborate metaphors, Hogan representing an idealized, almost cartoonish American heroism, while Orndorff embodied a more complex, narcissistic ambition. Each encounter was a chapter in an ongoing saga of masculine competition and performative aggression. By 1986, Orndorff had undergone a fascinating character transformation. From a pure heel, he began transitioning into a more nuanced performer, sometimes villain, sometimes anti-hero. This fluidity was revolutionary. He wasn't locked into a simplistic good guy, bad guy binary. but existed in a more sophisticated narrative space. His matches demonstrated his capacity for complex storytelling. Each bout was a piece of long-form dramatic performance, with Orndorff as its complex muscular protagonist. The late 1980s saw Orndorff dealing with significant physical challenges. A neck injury threatened to derail his career, a common occupational hazard in a profession that demanded superhuman physical performance. But true to his character, Orndorff approached rehabilitation with the same intensity he brought to wrestling. His ability to return to the ring after serious injury became in itself a compelling narrative. He wasn't just a wrestler, he was a symbol of physical resilience. Each comeback was a statement about human potential, about refusing to be defined by physical limitations. By the early 1990s, the wrestling landscape was changing. The Federation was becoming a global entertainment brand, and performers like Orndorff were transitioning into new roles. He made a return to WCW and continued wrestling, engaging in notable feuds with the likes of Cactus Jack and Dustin Rhodes. But his significance was increasingly historical, a bridge between wrestling's territorial past and its global future. The later years of his life were marked by significant health challenges. On January 5, 2011, Orndorff revealed that he had been diagnosed with throat cancer, with doctors giving him only days to live while he relied on a feeding tube. Against the odds, he triumphantly announced on August 10th that the cancer had disappeared. However, just over a decade later, on July 12, 2021, Orndorff passed away at the age of 71 in Atlanta, Georgia, succumbing to the ravages of dementia. In 2005, Orndorff was immortalized with an induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, cementing his legacy as one of the industry's all-time greats. In the grand narrative of professional wrestling, Paul Orndorff represents a critical evolutionary moment, a performer who understood that wrestling was never just about winning or losing, but about telling compelling human stories through the most visceral of physical languages. Mr. Wonderful wasn't just a nickname, it was a statement about athletic potential, about the capacity for human transformation. May he rest in peace.